Wait, you mean that how you think and how you emotionally process can actually make you sick? What's up, y'all? This is Dr. Mel, and I'm here to share with you why cultural stress and the way you think can make you sick, and how that actually happens, not only on a personal level, but a system-wide level. Before we get into how to solve it, I want to share with you the cycle. And you may be familiar with this in your consciousness. You've probably heard people talk about it in the last 2 years of, it's the system is broken. And yes, while I agree with some of that, we have to take responsibility as far as leaders and how we are involved in some of the problems as well in order to take new action, have new insight, and step into a new paradigm of what health actually is. Before we get into this video, I'm gonna ask you and invite you to comment, like, subscribe on this channel, and let me know in the comments below what other concepts and content you want me to talk about when it comes to health and consciousness and overall well-being in your life. So let's get into it. Here's a little breakdown for you. All right, my friends, we are going old school here. Paper and pen and a little diagram for you. So first, there's this quote unquote cultural narrative that we all live into. Most often, what I mean by this is the messages we get from social media, from the news, probably your coworkers and your friends. And this is most often rooted in fear, i.e., protect yourself, watch out, take all the necessary precautions so that you don't get sick or you don't get injured or XYZ. It doesn't really matter what the topic is. It's just a matter of what is the messaging, what is the languaging, and what is the psychology that we're using. Again, I'm not here to create arguments, just to recognize that majority of the messaging we receive from the culture is oftentimes rooted in fear. Now, when we're steeped in that, over days, over weeks, over months, and over years, what happens is we respond because we're communal beings and we're not separate from the culture, and our nervous system processes that. So as a result, there's an increase in this stress hormone called cortisol, and you've probably heard it. This is the stress hormone that tells us, hey, you're in danger. It's time to run away from the predator, or it's time to fight it. So our body releases things like cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, and endorphins to help us get out of this situation. Now, here's the thing. It's important to note that a perception of what's happening on TV versus an actual threat like a saber-toothed tiger, your brain processes this stress and perceives stress the same exact way neurochemically. As this hormone is coursing through our veins, then what happens? Our body says, wait a second, I need fuel. I need fuel for my muscles, I need fuel for my lungs, and I need to make sure that I have enough energy to survive, which either means killing the threat or running away. So there's an increase in what we call cravings, or simple sugars, processed sugars, refined sugars, things like candy and sweets, due to our body being in a state of fight or flight. And when our nervous system is in a state of fight or flight, it does not care about broccoli. It does not care about the complex sugars and the complex carbs. No, it wants the fast sugar because it needs energy now. Now think about this. This works, right? If you fight off your predator or you fight off your threat, great. That cortisol goes down and your body rebalances. However, if you're constantly in this state and constantly steeped in this cultural stress, your body keeps releasing cortisol. And of course, you keep craving different things you know don't necessarily serve your normal state. So then what happens? Because of our increased cortisol and increased inflammation from the sugar we're consuming, there's a decrease in the immune cell response due to elevated neurochemistry in the form of cortisol and inflammation. Our immune cells don't necessarily like when our neurochemistry is in that elevated state of stress. It doesn't care as much about fighting the virus. It cares about running away from the saber-toothed tiger. So therefore, our immune cells are impacted. And we have a diminished immune response because our body is already in a state of fight or flight for so long. as our immune cell response decreases, i.e. our immunity, what happens then? Over time, our inner adaptability, our fortress, our cellular being decreases in our ability to respond to threats over and over and over again, because eventually we hit a threshold and our inner nervous system can no longer respond. And our culture calls this, quote unquote, getting sick. Now, in the holistic world, we talk about this from a different perspective. That'll probably be in another video. So if you haven't already, subscribe, and I'll talk about this in another video. But as our adaptability hits its threshold, our culture calls that getting sick, or we say is symptoms arise. There's nothing wrong with symptoms. However, our culture, and in this cascade, this cycle we're working through, there's different strategies. And it's not right or wrong, it's not good or bad, but our healthcare system responds to these symptoms and getting sick very differently than oftentimes what I recommend to my clients from a holistic fashion. But again, we'll get into that in another video. So, as our adaptability changes, we quote unquote get sick or have symptoms. So what happens next? We ignore bodily symptoms, even though the symptomatology is screaming at us to pay attention. And due to the culture that we live in, demands, stress, achievements, we continue to overwork, overdo, and overdrive and not rest due to such demands, whether it's cultural or the demands we all know exist within the corporate realm. Do more, push more, drive more, produce more, and make more money. Even though, at the end of the day, when you don't have your health, no amount of money is going to save us. So then, you add more flames and more fuel to the fire. And because we live in a world where the consciousness is to work and suck it up, buttercup, there's a reliance on a quick fix. Make it go away, make it stop. In our culture, we have a hard time being okay with discomfort and being okay with just resting and slowing down. So there's a reliance on a quick fix. That's my little pill there. Whether it's a medication or something to numb the symptoms, we keep going and we suppress the symptoms. And anytime you suppress symptoms, oftentimes it pops up again down the road in another form, unless we get to the cause. So what's the cause? Well, if we keep going on this train and suppress the symptoms and not get to the underlying root stressor of why our body is at a diminished adaptability, well, then what happens? The cycle continues. And we go right back into the cultural narrative. We're steeped in fear. Our cortisol continues to rise. We eat things that don't necessarily serve our immune system or consume things that don't necessarily support our inner fortress getting stronger. Our immunity decreases once again. Cortisols continue to rise. More and more symptoms show up. We still feel the demands of probably doing things that don't align with our inner values and our inner being. And we continue to look for the quick fixes, which, by the way, quick fixes also exist. That consciousness exists in the holistic realm. And this cycle continues. So you can see from this perspective, it can be pretty easy to get stuck in this cycle, even from a young age, and live into it when you're older. So what do we do about this? How do we break this cycle? Well, I'm here to share with you that there are ways to break the cycle, even if you feel like you're really deep within the weeds. I go over this to share a different perspective, to share that when our bodies are not operating the way we know we were designed, it's not just a one-time linear thing. Oftentimes we've been in a cycle and in a process for a long time that is very multidimensional, and it's not just equated to one thing. Oftentimes our body, when we deal with stress, it's not because you were outside in the cold or standing in the rain. It's a multidimensional phenomena that over time weakens your body, and your body can no longer adapt. So how do we break the cycle? Well, one, it's important to recognize where you're at in the system. And this is not to judge the system, this is not to bash the system, but recognize where are you potentially not acknowledging where you're out of alignment with your values? Where are you potentially not acknowledging that you're ignoring your body. And where are you pushing through as a result of maybe trying to achieve something you know doesn't align with your personal mission? So the first step in any sort of change, in any sort of transformation, and breaking any sort of cycle, whether it's personal or generational or political or in the healthcare system, is to recognize where you are playing a part in it. Not to judge yourself, not to blame yourself, not to go into guilt and shame, but rather recognize that you're human. And if you're living in the world right now, it's 2022, you are probably part of some system that's dysfunctional in some way, because that's how life is at this time. So recognition is a really great start to shifting. So recognize, where is your consciousness in this, and where are your actions maybe not in alignment with what you know is truly resonating with you. So number one is acknowledgement. Number two is recognizing, where can you make subtle shifts? Where can you make micro shifts in your actions, in your thoughts, and in your beliefs? I highly recommend starting with, what is it that you believe about health? What do you believe to be true about the body? What do you believe to be true about holistic health? And what do you believe to be true about how you want to live in the world? Checking in with your beliefs and why you believe what you believe is a second great step to start when it comes to breaking this pattern. And the last one I'll leave you with is asking yourself, what is it that you truly value? What do I mean by that? If you've never taken time to sit down and go inward and ask yourself what you actually value in your life, what matters to you, what inspires you, I'll drop a link in the comments here below and in the description of this video below so that you can, for free, determine what is it that you value. Get to know yourself, right? In our culture, we look at so often studying other things and studying other people and studying other systems, and yet, what about ourselves? How much do you know about yourself? Because the more you can know about thyself, you can then impact and influence the world around you from a much more embodied and balanced state. So asking yourself, what are your values? Are you actually doing and being and living into your values, or are you living into the projected values of potentially your parents, your friends, and the system around you that tells you a narrative that maybe doesn't align with how you deeply desire to live? What do I mean by that? Well, this can be in your job. This can be in your relationships. This can be in how you run your business. This can be with how you spend your time and your energy. Oftentimes, for example, this can look like, well, you should do this, or you should go visit these people, or you should work all the time, and don't do that. We hear all these narratives and projections into us from other people. And we have to recognize, one, that everyone has a set of values and everyone's trying to live into their values. And if the people around you don't necessarily align with your values, it's natural to want other people to live into what you deem valuable. So, like I said, if you haven't already, go to the link in the description of this video. Dr. John DeMartini, he's an amazing mentor of mine. I've trained with him and I am currently training with him. And figure out, what is it that drives you? What is it that inspires you from within, so that you can start to live into that alignment? The more you can be in alignment with what it is you value in life, your nervous system will become more balanced. Because when we're not living in alignment with our values, what tends to happen is we live in a state of fear. We think that we have to chase the prize or run away from, the fears that we fear happening, right? And the fantasies that we're striving, because we're not in alignment with what actually matters to us. So we're operating in this imbalanced state, and that can lead to that cycle we talked about before. That can lead to an overwhelmed and overdriven nervous system, which then leads to that decreased adaptability. So when you can actually be in alignment and know what your values are, know what your mission is, know what your vision is for your life, and only you know that, you can pursue these visions and these missions and these goals through both support and challenge. Things that challenge you won't get you down. And you'll see the divine balance of everything in the universe, because there's something greater within you and all around you. I hope this video brought you some perspective. I hope this video brought you some understanding of where the cycle begins and how to start to break the cycle and ultimately live into your power and reclaim your life from the inside out. So comment below what you got out of this video. Let me know what you want to hear, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.